Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Love Rising podcast. We are here with Stephanie Rome. You want me to say that, Stephanie?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Stephanie Rome. She just had not that recently, I guess, but a name change because she got married. And she was on the podcast before talking about Ayurvedic medicine, and she was Stephanie Marish. So just so you guys know, it's the same person. And Stephanie and I are friends from Denver, Colorado. She's still there in Denver, works under the name Keenist, which I'll read the bio. Stephanie is a certified holistic nutritionist and health coach behind Keenist. She provides personalized one-on-one counseling to clients across the country in developing healthy and sustainable nutrition and lifestyle habits. She doesn't promote diets and doesn't believe there is one right way to eat for everyone. Rather than adhering to one particular dietary philosophy, she works with her clients to devise an eating plan that's tailored to each person's individual needs and sustainable in the long term. Some of Stephanie's specialties include helping clients transition off birth control, heal hormonal imbalances, and optimize fertility. To learn about Stephanie's offerings, check out her website, keenist.com, and it's Keenist. That's Keenist all over all the social media as well. And we will link to that. So we're on this month of motherhood. We're talking about motherhood from all different aspects. And we brought Stephanie on because I am actually personally working with her to balance my hormones and kind of boost my fertility to get pregnant sometime in the future. I'm not actively trying or anything, but I wanted to just get my body in a place where it would hopefully be as easy as possible. And so I've been learning a lot, been thinking a lot about it. And when we decided to do a thing on motherhood, I was like, well, let's have Stephanie come on and talk about what she does with people, because that's a big part of it. So welcome.
Thanks, Clara.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us your story as it pertains to this kind of subject, getting off birth control.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like most women in our generation, I was prescribed a pill when I was in high school, and for mostly just heavy periods and somewhat irregular cycles, which is pretty common, when you first get when you first start menstruating. I stayed on it all through college, and at some point during like the 8 or so years that I was taking it, I stopped having a bleed week. So I remember going to the gynecologist each year and asking about whether it was okay that I wasn't having a period, because I was just pretty weirded out by it. And every visit, she's like, no, it's fine. You're good. Like, just keep on keeping on, keep taking it. You're fine. And even though I was skeptical, I just sort of accepted the answer because, she was the doctor and the expert, but also because, frankly, it was super convenient not to have a period to deal with. But as time went on, I was like, after college, I was just getting a lot more health conscious and cleaning up my diet and lifestyle and deciding, to go to nutrition school. And taking synthetic hormones every day just sort of stopped resonating with my lifestyle, and never having a period just started to really not sit well with me anymore. So one day I just sort of finished the pack and didn't refill the prescription, and figured I'd get my period back. As the doctor had said, she was like, you'll get it back as soon as you go off, basically. And, 3 months went by, 6, 12, no sign of a period a year later. And of course I was super worried about everything, just thinking that something was structurally wrong, or that I was never going to be able to have kids. And I mean, at that point I was 24 and single, so it wasn't like I was trying to get pregnant right away or anything, but I just started getting freaked out that was never going to be a possibility for me. So anyway, I ended up working with a doctor for a while, and he diagnosed me with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. But he really didn't give me any tools with which to manage the condition or bring back my period. He was basically like, that's your diagnosis, and I really have nothing for you. And so actually his suggestion was to go back on the pill, which obviously makes no sense.
I want to talk about that too, because at some point, but like I see that all the time, that's the solution that women are given. And for to not have to go into it super in depth, like I just would love to know like what you say and like how you're like, no, that's actually the opposite thing that you need to do right now, even though it is more convenient in the short term,
In the short term, yeah, for sure. I'd love to get into like just how the pill works. Kind of, I think that would help to give people context on like why that's not solving the problem. It's just sort of putting a band-aid on. There's obviously a hormonal, like an underlying hormonal issue creating the absent menstrual cycle. So why would sort of going back on a pill and suppressing your hormones fix it? It wouldn't. So yeah, anyway, that even at the time before I really knew anything about hormones or pills or anything, I just like that really makes no sense. Like I'm not going back on the pill. So I just kind of took it upon myself to dive into the research and basically study and learn everything I could about women's health and hormone balance and periods and pills and especially PCOS, since that's kind of what I was going through. And after about 2 years, I finally did get a period after I was working pretty hard at it. And it was actually, Clara, it was at Vajragrama, which is the Panchakarma, the Ayurvedic Panchakarma Center in India that we talked about on our last podcast.
Yeah.
And it was like this crazy miracle. But after that, I mean, my periods were all over the place for a while, like several years. And I guess here we are 5 years later or so, 5 or 6 years later. And I do have a regular cycle, which is good, and ovulate every month. And but I do walk my talk in terms of like working at it, because it's not like if I sort of let go of the diet and lifestyle that I follow, I can't imagine that my periods would continue to be regular. And then also this podcast topic is relevant to me, not only like professionally, but also personally, because my husband and I are also gearing up to, I guess, stop preventing.
Sometime I like that.
So I'm right in there with everybody listening, like doing all the things that will be that I'll be recommending today in our chat.
Yeah. So good. So awesome. And I like how it plays into, the Ayurvedic piece too, that we talked about last time. So if you guys are interested in that, go back and listen to that episode. But this first question, when should couples start preconception prep? I think preconception is something like preconception nutrition, or this idea that like we should prepare ourselves, is pretty foreign, like because people mostly just like kind of either decide to get pregnant and try to get pregnant, or don't decide and get pregnant. And so the idea that there should be some sort of preparation, I think is pretty foreign to people. So when should we think about that? Why should we think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, when couples are hoping to conceive, there's sort of several areas that I'll typically like work with them on in order just to ensure that they're doing everything possible to not only like conceive like naturally, but in a timely way, but also set themselves up for a healthy pregnancy. Because it's one thing to get pregnant, it's another thing to stay pregnant and then have a healthy pregnancy. So it's kind of like looking a little bit longer term, but all those types of things that we're working on take a little bit of time. And when you think about egg health, it takes about 90, some people say 100 days for an egg to mature and be selected for ovulation. So I typically recommend like a focused preconception protocol should be started a minimum of 3 months before you actually start trying to conceive. But honestly, ideally longer, like 6 months would be better. So 3 months at a minimum, 6 months to a year, ideally before, just so that you can kind of get everything dialed in prior to actually sort of, as I said before, like stop preventing.
And what about like, because I just feel like someone might listen to that and say, but so many people just try and get pregnant. Like what are the benefits? What are we either avoiding when we do this preparation, or what are we what's the benefit we're going to get if we were to do that versus just, let's just try and get pregnant.
Yeah. I mean, and some people, like, it really kind of depends on where people are at and everything. Like, a lot of people change their diet when they get pregnant, right? They're like, oh, now I have this baby, like I need to be healthy now. But really the baby's sort of health started far before actually getting pregnant. Like, as I said, that egg that you ovulate has been sort of, call it quote unquote in line, ready to be ovulated for the last 90 or 100 days. So the health of that egg and the health, obviously, of your husband's sperm as well is making up your baby's DNA. And so it doesn't just sort of start at the time that you conceive. It starts far before that. And that's the benefit of like starting to look at your diet, evaluate that, balance your hormones if you're having irregular cycles at all, or and we'll talk about this more, but like getting into like why women have it's common for women to have low progesterone. And so they might be able to get pregnant, but they might not be able to stay pregnant. And so obviously thinking about preventing miscarriage and stuff like that. And then also reducing body burden, because I think the most recent study I read, like the infant can absorb about 25% of the maternal toxins in utero. So you don't want to have like a big toxic soup in there, like bathing your baby in that. So that's kind of, I think, a lot of the benefits of starting before. It's not to scare people into starting before. It's just like, if you really want to create the best environment you can, it's wise to sort of think about it a couple months before.
So I have a couple questions. Is that going to vary with the age of the person, of the woman trying to get pregnant? Are you going to want to think about doing like a longer prep if you're older or anything like that? And then also, a lot of times I hear pre-pregnancy is the best time to do some sort of a detox. Are there any maybe more healthier detox approaches that you prefer to have people go through? And maybe that's a really loaded question, but I would love to kind of know.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to be, I'll circle back to the first question, but in regards to the detox, like, you don't want to be like actively doing a detox protocol as you are trying to conceive, because if you get pregnant, obviously that's you're basically in a detox program mobilizing toxins. So there's a lot more toxins sort of circulating around instead of being stored in like your fat tissue, which is where they're kind of out of the way and out of like not causing any harm. So yeah, definitely not like during the TTC, trying to conceive time, you wouldn't want to be doing that. But prior, it is a great time to do a gentle detox. So what I typically recommend is not anything like extreme or crazy with like like restriction, like juice cleanses and stuff like that. Instead, it's just focusing on nutrients that support the liver. And I think we'll kind of get into that as part of the plan, like the reducing your body burden and enhancing detoxification with foods. Sometimes I'll use herbs. Again, those herbs should be stopped as soon as somebody wants to cooling cleanse for spring and summer. And so I'll often recommend that as a starting place for women to get going. And then maybe some tea, like some detox tea as well. As for the age question, no, not necessarily. I would say really you would want to get started a little earlier if you're on the pill. So that's kind of maybe a good segue into talking about the pill, because there's a lot of the mechanisms with which the pill works can sort of hinder fertility. And so that in those cases, we want to have a little bit more time to sort of correct everything that the pill has done prior to trying to conceive, but not necessarily age.
So yeah. So what does the pill do? When should someone get off of it? Kind of how does it work, and how does it put you at, I guess, like at risk of not conceiving as easily?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're taking some sort of like oral contraceptive, or even the hormonal IUD, like the Mirena.
Yeah. Let's make sure, I guess, if there's any differences between those.
Yeah.
Or
I always just say the pill, but what I'm referring to is all of the hormonal contraceptives. So whether it's the pill or the patch or the IUD or the shot, I mean, any of those things that, that give you synthetic hormones. This is what we're talking about. I'm just probably going to say the pill because it's easier. The one exception would be the IUD, the copper IUD. That one is non-hormonal, so it wouldn't have the sort of effects that I'm going to go through. Usually with women who are on the copper IUD, if they get it taken out, they can start getting, they could get pregnant right away. So that's no worries. But anyway, I just recommend getting off birth control at least, again, 3 months before, but 6 months is better. So basically, you want to have that buffer for a few reasons. One is sort of at the most basic level, the pill prevents ovulation. So by taking the pill, your brain gets the message that there's enough hormones like estrogen and progesterone in circulation, and so there's no need to make more. So basically, your brain stops communicating with the ovaries, and the ovaries no longer get the signal to ovulate. So no egg is released each month. And so therefore pregnancy is prevented. But when you're shutting down that communication line between the brain and the ovaries, for a lot of women, that communication doesn't come back online immediately. Like for me, it took 2 years for that to sort of kick back up and running. And I was on the pill maybe, I think about 8 or 9 years. So think about, like, it also comes down to the duration potentially. Like if you were on the pill for 6 months versus 20 years, it's a big difference for looking at how long your brain sort of not been told what to do or been told to do what it's supposed to be doing each month, which is telling the ovaries to make hormones.
And how does it do that? Like, how does it tell the brain, or how is the brain getting that signal?
So basically it's acting on your hypothalamus and your pituitary are like the two, let's say, message centers of the brain that make hormones that tell the ovaries to make hormones. So does that make sense? I mean, I could get into like all of the different stuff, but I don't think people really care.
I guess what I was going to say is that it's synthetic hormones. So it's kind of like basically.
It's like the feedback loop.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So it's basically like a lot of our hormonal systems are on like a negative feedback loop. So when your brain senses that there's estrogen and progesterone in circulation, it's like, oh, the ovaries are already doing it. I don't need to tell them to do it more, right? And so it kind of just stops. The feedback loop shuts down that signal from the brain to the ovaries. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
And then in addition to shutting down that communication line and blocking ovulation, the pill can also cause changes to the endometrium. So it makes the lining of the uterus less favorable for an embryo to implant. So even if you were to get pregnant somehow, like even if the sort of egg and the sperm meet, it doesn't really have the environment with which to sort of burrow in and make a little home for itself, right? So and it's usually the uterine lining gets very thin, which is why, like, for example, in my case, I didn't get a period, or I wouldn't call it a period. I would call it a withdrawal bleed or a breakthrough bleed while taking the pill, because my uterine lining was so thin, there was really nothing to shed each month. And it causes changes to cervical mucus as well. So it makes your cervical fluid less conducive to sperm, and therefore harder for the sperm to swim to the egg once it's released. So there's sort of a few things going on there. And so basically too, the pill can cause a lot of side effects that compromise fertility. So it can make your gut microbiome imbalanced, impair your thyroid function, deplete your body of key nutrients, like key fertility nutrients like magnesium and B vitamins, and then some of the minerals like zinc and selenium, and antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E. So as you can see, shutting down your natural hormones, messing with your gut health, depleting you of nutrients, like all of that makes it pretty obvious why giving your body a couple of months to get things back in tip-top like fertility shape is necessary for most women. And I'm not saying all, like there's definitely those women out there that they get off the pill and then all of a sudden they're pregnant like a week later, and that's great. Like, I'm glad that it does happen the way that doctors tell us that it happens for some people. But for a lot of people, that's not the case. They have absent cycles for months on end, and they get sort of this like resurgence of symptoms that they had maybe in puberty, like before they got on the pill, like acne, or their hair starts falling out, or weight gain, or bloating, or any sort of like symptom related to their hormones being all over the place.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess the next question is kind of like, so it's actually kind of amazing that 3 months is all it takes. That's like the first thing. I was like, wow.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Like that's a lot of people have been on that hormonal birth control for a long time. And the fact that our bodies are pretty amazing if they can kind of overcome all of those things and get pregnant within just 3 months, you know?
Totally. And that's the thing that I always say, like a minimum of 3 months. And for some women, like they do get it back in that time frame and they're like good to go. And then for other women, like as I shared my story, like it took 2 years. So that's kind of why I say, like, if you are considering getting pregnant or you'd like to conceive sometime in the near-ish future, it's better to come off the pill sooner than later, because you don't know how long it's going to take you specifically. It might take 4 months, it might take 8 months, it might take 1 month. So it's kind of hard to know. But the more like you do some of this stuff that we're going to get into, like the quicker that it'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, did you have something, Kylee? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I would love to get into the plan and kind of hear the approach that, you know, you've seen work really well for women that you've worked with.
Yeah, for sure. So do you want me to just jump right into preconception prep?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, let's talk about the fertility awareness method just as like quickly, because I feel like some people are going to hear all this stuff about birth control and be like, wait, I don't even want to be on birth control. And like knowing that that's possible, if you have, you know, there's a few factors that make it easier, like having a partner that, you know, a monogamous partner and all of these things, and like someone who's willing to work with you and that kind of thing, and lifestyle. But like you can, you know, you can not get pregnant and not be on hormonal birth control and have sex. Like that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, while this is a little bit of like pill bashing, you know, I'm not really meaning it to be like, everybody needs to get off the pill. The pill's horrible for every single person. It's just the fact that, you know, we're all individuals, right? Like, and some women do really great on the pill and they really have no issues being on it. They have no issues getting off of it. And so for them, like it works just like it should. For other women, it's a Band-Aid solution to dealing with their hormonal issues. It gets covered up, and then ultimately sort of their symptoms and their hormonal imbalances come back with a vengeance when they do get off, and their hormones are all over the place. And so there's a lot of work to be done post-pill. So I guess like just as a disclaimer, I do support like women's right to choose whatever birth control method they want. But I just wanted to make it clear that hormonal birth control isn't the only option for preventing pregnancy. There's a natural way, which is called the fertility awareness method. And it's basically a way of learning about your body so that you can predict the fertile and infertile times in your cycle. So in those ways, you can sort of have potentially have unprotected sex during if you know your infertile times, and then you just use protection during your fertile window. So there's sort of a lot of resources out there you can learn about fertility awareness method. It's abbreviated as FAM, F-A-M, but I just typically recommend for women getting started to download an app for tracking. So there's a ton of period apps out there now. The one I use a lot is called Kindara, but there are tons. Clara, what's the one that you use again?
I use Natural Cycles.
Yeah, which is a great one too. I mean, they all sort of have pretty similar functionality, but starting with an app and then checking for signs of fertility. So there's sort of 3 primary signs, one being cervical fluid. So we've talked about that briefly, but what we're looking for is fertile fluid about halfway through the cycle. Like if you're having a 28-day cycle, you'd be looking for this around day 12 to day 16. And essentially, it's like a slippery, sort of stretchy cervical fluid that resembles raw egg white. And that fluid's a sign that your body is nearing ovulation. And it's also the fluid that assists the sperm in the journey towards the cervix, and through the cervix, and to the uterus to fertilize the egg. So it's kind of doing it has a lot of roles, in terms of like lubrication during sex, escorting the sperm to the egg. And it's also really helpful if you are monitoring it, because you can see it and then go like, okay, I'm going to ovulate in the next probably 24 to 48 hours. So that's one sign. Another sign's basal body temperature charting. So your basal body temperature is just your temperature at rest. And so I recommend taking your temperature like upon rising in the morning, first thing. And what we're looking for here is just a rise in body temperature at ovulation. And then for your temperatures to stay high through the luteal phase. And so this is where the app comes in really handy, because it helps to plot the temperatures on a graph so that we can evaluate what your hormones are doing throughout the cycle. And then the third thing is just cervical position. So I consider this one optional. When you're not,
I'm going to show this for people that might, be watching the video. This is my graph for like this cycle. So this red area is where I'm in my fertile window, and that's ovulation. And then this is my unfertile windows. So I have like different,
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's like super helpful, like when we talk, for example, if your temperatures aren't staying high through the luteal phase, then we can sort of infer that potentially you're not making enough progesterone to keep your temperatures up. And that's something that we would want to correct prior to trying to conceive, because you really, really need adequate progesterone levels to maintain a pregnancy and not miscarry. So there's sort of a lot to all of this. And again, like there's a ton of books and free, just Google search it, but or work with a practitioner who can kind of teach you the method. But yeah, I was talking about the third thing, which is just the cervical position. So again, it's optional. If somebody has a lot of like ample cervical fluid, they know exactly what's going on there, and they're really diligent with their basal body temperature, then this one might not be necessary. But basically, when you're in your fertile window, your cervix is sitting like really low in the vaginal canal, and so it feels firm, kind of like the tip of your nose. But then when ovulation approaches and your fertility is high, so you're right in that fertile window, the cervix opens up and becomes really soft, and it's harder to reach because it's like high up in the vaginal canal. So some women are sort of tracking what their cervical position's doing each day, and can really get a sense of like, it feels quite different based on where you're at in your cycle. So I usually teach clients about this in our sessions, but as I said, tons of resources online if somebody's interested about making the leap from birth control to fertility awareness.
Yeah. I really like the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. It's kind of like a textbook, but so it's not really something you're going to like sit down and just like read like page by page, but it's really good if people are looking for a resource on fertility awareness method.
Yeah, and it has photos, like, for example, of what the cervical fluid is like. If I describe it as raw egg white, people are like, I need a visual, so that's, I mean, it's a great book. I feel like it's on like all of our bookshelves. And so from there, that's when we would sort of jump into that. Like, that would be something to start doing once you finish the pill. Like, so if you finish your pack and you sort of just start to like monitor, like if your hormones are doing anything, if you start to see any cervical fluid, you can start taking your temperatures, that kind of thing. And hopefully while also working through a preconception plan. Do you want to jump into that?
So what is that? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So usually, like, because I work with women one-on-one, like I devise a preconception plan, which is customized to like her individual goals and needs and lifestyle and schedule and all of those things and what's going on with her hormones. But today, I mean, I feel like it'd be good to just talk about a general plan and make sure we hit the highlights of what, I guess, the big concepts are to address, either whether it's post-pill or whether you're thinking about trying to conceive in the next 3 to 6 months or so. So obviously, like, as a nutritionist, diet, I'm always going to go like diet is a big one, and a healthy diet full of fertility foods is sort of my game plan there. So preconception nourishment is really key, not only for fertility but also for the health of your future baby. So we want to build up your micronutrients and your macronutrients before pregnancy, because there's a lot of key components of your baby's brain are built before you even know that you're pregnant. So being as healthy and well nourished as you can before conception, I think, is really pretty important. So, I mean, I won't go into like everything super detailed, but I do recommend like, good quality protein, healthy fat, carbohydrates. I usually call carbohydrates fiber, because I'm sort of categorizing them more as like fruits and veggies, as opposed to just like, carbs from bagels and bread and pasta and stuff like that. So protein, fat, and fiber at every meal, which will make your meals nutrient dense, and also very blood sugar balancing, which is really important for getting your hormones balanced. Do you want to go through why protein and fats and fiber and stuff is all important, or do you feel like people kind of have a general understanding of like quality there? Okay.
I think quality, definitely they're aware. Is there anything though, as far as like that you would always take out of the diet as for fertility? Like you would
I mean, I would always, when we're thinking about like protein and, it's just like, if people are eating animal foods, great. So both animal and vegetarian sources, quality is always key there. Fats are going to be the building blocks of hormones. So we really want to get in a lot of good, healthy fats, like wild-caught fish and avocados and nuts and seeds and stuff. And then fiber, from your organic fruits and veggies, is going to give you all the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and antioxidants that you need. As for the foods to remove, the foods that are inflammatory are not going to be fertility foods. So things like sugar and refined vegetable oils like canola oil and trans fats. For a lot of women, we'll also pull out gluten and dairy as well, depending. Gluten alone can be a major food sensitivity, and food sensitivities are something to address in the preconception period, because they can definitely block your fertility, because your immune system's going crazy, and it's not going to be conducive to a pregnancy. So usually just sort of get rid of the inflammatory foods, caffeine and alcohol too. A little bit of coffee here and there and stuff is likely fine for most people preconception, but alcohol is not doing you any favors, and you're ultimately going to have to give it up when you get pregnant anyway. So it's like just starting a little early on that, just to help kind of clean your body out. And we'll talk about the detox stuff. And so alcohol is, never on a detox plan. And then I always do recommend my favorite fertility food, which is liver. And I feel like a lot of people they have trouble getting their head around that, but it really is one of the most nutrient dense foods you can find. It's a really great source of vitamin A, which is hard to get in food, and it's good. It's really abundant in B vitamins and iron and trace minerals and stuff. So I use it as a sort of medicinal food for supporting egg health. And if people really cannot eat any sort of organ meat, that's just totally revolting for them, there are supplements. So there is beef liver capsules that you can take if we think it's necessary. Do you eat liver, Clara? Can't do it.
I can't do it. Do you eat liver?
Yeah, I was gonna give a little tip on this. So we raise our own animals. So we're pretty lucky. We have our beef liver. We have chicken livers. Yeah. And so what I do is I have an obscene amount of chicken livers in my freezer. But what I tend to do is I will chop them up really, really, really fine, or even you can blend them, and then you can kind of add them into things. So if you're making a ground beef or fajitas or something like that, you can just put a couple ounces in there. Or if you're making burgers, you can just mix it in there, and that tends to kind of mask it a little bit, and then you can actually add it into so many things that you make. So that's a good way to kind of hide it in. But yeah, we do eat liver around these parts.
That's awesome.
I feel
like I can do pate. I like pate a lot, like beef liver pate or chicken pate. But for whatever reason, I can't figure out the whole liver and onions.
The poultry livers are better. I've noticed poultry. So gout, foie gras, that's amazing. But chicken liver is a little less offensive than beef liver to me. And true. I used to take it. So another really important thing for our listeners is don't buy just any liver. It has this, it's concentrated nutrients. So if it's an unhealthy animal, it will be unhealthy. So you want to make sure it's a local, grass finished, grass fed, pastured, all of those things, organic, when you're buying these organ meats. But I used to buy them from a farm, the beef livers, and literally put them in I would blend it up and put it in ice cube trays, and then take it a liver ice cube out and throw it in a smoothie. That was had a lot of other flavors, and that was fine. And it was just a little tiny bit, but I haven't done it in years at this point.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But that was the only thing I could even handle. I was just I can't do this at all. But feed your baby's liver, because I've heard that if you eat it when you're younger, you like it. And I was never ate it ever. Yeah. So. Same.
It's great all through. Not just the preconception phase. You know, it'd be great to eat during pregnancy, postpartum. Like, it's just so nutrient. I consider it like a full-on superfood. If people can get around it, then it's a great addition. Of course, you can still have a nutrient-dense diet without it, but it is sort of something I always bring up. And the other thing I typically recommend, which is more from the Ayurvedic perspective, but warm cooked foods instead of cold raw foods during the preconception phase. Not exclusively necessarily, like if you're sort of doing your preconception plan prep phase in the middle of summer, it's okay to, you know, have some salads and smoothies and stuff. But you know, the reason for incorporating more like warm cooked foods is that they're easier to digest, so it helps to enhance nutrient absorption. But two, warm foods from like an energetic level help to improve blood flow and pelvic circulation, and so it helps to just balance the hormones that way, and bring a lot of like good nutrients and blood flow to the reproductive organs. So if possible, you know, just having more like warming foods in your diet would be great. I hope that, yeah. That makes sense.
It's great.
Okay, so like diet, I feel like we covered that. You know, balancing hormones is always going to be another step of the protocol, depending on where women are at, right? So if they just came off the pill, we're sort of getting the communication back going, seeing what their hormones are going to do naturally now that they're not taking synthetic hormones anymore. Or if women are having wonky cycles and they can't figure out if they're ovulating, and they can't, you know, they have sort of no real idea of where they're at in their cycle, then we'll sort of hone in on balancing estrogen and progesterone, which are the two female sex hormones that we want to ensure are balanced to support conception. So balancing your hormones really requires like a multi-system approach. You know, it's not just sort of one thing and you're good. So because imbalances can stem from a lot of different areas. Like it can be an issue with the adrenals or the thyroid or your gut or your liver detoxification system or your diet or lifestyle. So looking at the whole person and really taking a holistic approach is necessary here. But I'll kind of run through a little bit, just some stuff on estrogen and progesterone. But before I forget, I just wanted to like sort of mention the thyroid stuff, because we were talking about that a lot, Clara. And pregnancy, like just so women kind of know why the thyroid's so important, pregnancy is literally like a stress test for your thyroid. So when you do get pregnant, your thyroid function has to be on point, and because low thyroid hormone increases the risk of miscarriage. So knowing your status before you get pregnant is really important. And so I do generally recommend getting your thyroid hormones tested in the preconception phase, just to make sure that you're not already like sort of subclinical hypothyroid, and that when you do get pregnant, then it's, you know, it's likely that your thyroid will take a hit. And that's just no good. So,
and a lot of women have thyroid issues. I mean,
yeah,
it just comes up all the time, especially I feel like even our age right now, I've talked to so many people just in the last week, women that say, oh yeah, I have a thyroid issue.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it's, you know, there's no problem with getting on medication if your thyroid needs help. Like, I think that there's no like shame in doing that, because it's so important for your hormonal health and particularly your pregnancy, to make sure that your thyroid has enough juice to help you through the pregnancy and not have an issue postpartum too. So yeah, thyroid's key for sure. Estrogen, when we're looking at that, a lot of women are estrogen dominant, and like that's probably something that people have heard before. And what that really means is that their ratio of estrogen to progesterone is too high. So they're either making too much estrogen, or their body isn't metabolizing it effectively, or potentially they're not making enough progesterone. And some of like the signs and symptoms of estrogen dominance are things like weight gain or heavy or irregular periods, headaches, mood swings, breast tenderness, irritability. So it's kind of like all of those like PMS type of symptoms. And if a woman is experiencing a lot of that, I do recommend working on estrogen clearance, which we do a lot via supporting the liver, which will not only help to mitigate those symptoms, but also to help boost progesterone. So if your estrogen isn't clearing well, it often drives down progesterone, as I was saying, with that ratio. So that's really key. And then I've mentioned this a couple times, but just like the healthy progesterone levels are so important in order to stay pregnant once you conceive and avoid a miscarriage. You just really need those good levels of progesterone. And one of the first signs that you're suffering from low progesterone is typically really bad PMS. But you'll also sometimes see clues like mid-cycle spotting or irregular heavy bleeding, anxiety and insomnia, those types of things.
I think of like, this always helps me think of estrogen as like the gas and progesterone as like the brake.
Yeah.
So estrogen is like the things that like, it's kind of like, the irritability, like it's almost like mama bear type energy, like, and then
it's like the building hormone.
Right. And like progesterone is like the chill, like I'm going to relax, kind of like go inward, like be a little bit more calm. So
if you don't have enough of it, you feel really anxious and you can't sleep. Basically, yeah. So you can get your levels tested, like serum progesterone blood test. If you were worried that your progesterone was low, I typically recommend that 1 week before your periods due. So you kind of need to know where you're at in your cycle. It depends on the person, but for example, if you know that you ovulate on day 16, then you would likely go and get this test done 7 days later. If you have like a 14-day luteal phase. So that's something I'll help people figure out. But just so you have some context, like optimal would be somewhere between like 15 and 33 nanograms per milliliter, and higher than 15, so that would be like the minimum, is a strong indicator of ovulation. So if you have low progesterone levels, meaning under 15, you might not be ovulating, and that's really where we would want to focus on boosting that key hormone. So so typically those are sort of like the main ones that we'll focus on. But if women are transitioning off the pill, or if they have irregular absent cycles, I'll also recommend, for balancing their hormones, I'll recommend seed rotation, which we've been talking about. But I just think it's like the perfect way of using food as medicine. It's just, and I'll briefly explain the practice, but it's basically just a way of helping to regulate and support your cycle by boosting your estrogen levels in the first half of the cycle, and then supporting progesterone in the second. And so there's different seeds that contain different types of nutrients that our hormones need throughout the cycle. So you're basically doing pumpkin flax day 1 through 14 or so, and then sunflower sesame day 15 through 28. And I know that's not a lot of detail there, but I am in the process of writing a massive blog post on it. So everything you need to know about seed rotation. So if people are interested, they could just, jump on my my website mailing list or something, and then they can get it to their inbox. Because I think it's really a profound, it's so simple, but I've seen it do amazing things for supporting and regulating menstrual cycles that are.
And it is pretty simple. I mean, I think people need to read the blog post and get the details, but it is, I've been doing it since working with you, and it's pretty simple. Like, it's just literally eating those 2 seeds on either side of ovulation, right?
Yeah, so exactly.
It's not anything super complicated.
But I love incorporating that for sure. Like it's beneficial for women, like all the way through perimenopause. Like, it's a great thing to do just to support a regular cycle.
Do you do it still?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I think I like eat a ton of seeds anyways, so I may as well do it systematically, kind of. You know, like if I'm already going to be eating flax seeds and chia seeds and hemp seeds and all this stuff, it's like, well, I'll just do it in the right time as opposed to random. Yeah. And then do you want to talk about supplements, like key supplements?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm okay, like time wise. I don't know if you are, but I can go over. So it's
okay,
fine.
cool. Yeah. I just have a client at 10. So
Okay,
I'll just try to plow through it. But,
okay.
yeah. So like with supplements, there's sort of a delicate balance of hormones that are really profoundly affected by nutritional deficiencies. So the demand of specific nutrients during pregnancy are particularly taxing on the mom. So often like it can drain your nutritional reserves. So like a really good prenatal, along with of course a healthy diet, it can really like go a long way in helping you build up your nutrient stores before you get pregnant. So I typically recommend starting like a really high quality prenatal, again, a minimum of 3 months before trying to conceive. So, I mean, with prenatals, there's with the supplement industry in general, like there's just so much out there. There's a lot of like low quality stuff. And then there's like good professional brands that do a great job of making all of the nutrients in the supplement really bioavailable, which basically means that your body can recognize it and absorb it. So I use some of the brands that I like, know and trust, like the Designs for Health Prenatal Pro packets, which I think, Claire, you're doing, right? Yeah, there you go. You're muted.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say they're right in front of me. I'm gonna take them right now. After we get off.
They're
and
awesome.
They're sweet.
I mean,
they're sweet because for travel, I travel a lot, so I take this 2 times a day. So I just take 2 per day, and then I don't have to like figure out all that travel stuff. And then I have some other stuff that you're probably going to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like the Designs for Health. That's not the only brand. I mean, I really like the Metagenics. They also do a pregnancy packet. I think it's called Wellness Essentials pregnancy packets. I like the, if you don't want packets, like if you don't, if that's not really that helpful for you, you'd rather just have like a normal bottle. I like the Seeking Health prenatal. I also like the Thorne Research prenatal. So there's a lot of good brands out there, but basically what we're going for is,
and none of those you can get from a grocery store, guys. Don't get your supplements from a grocery store. Just don't. That's not to say that all of them are awful from Whole Foods and natural grocers, but I just like to say that just don't get your supplements from a grocery store, even a health food store. Get them from a practitioner or one of these brands that we're talking about.
Yeah. So in addition to, so your prenatal, just to clarify, I imagine people know this, but like it's going to have like big bunch of folate in there. It'll likely have like ideally 800 micrograms. You really need folate to prevent neural tube defects, and it's just really important for protecting your genes during like the rapid cell division, which is so it basically is increasing the likelihood of a healthy embryo. So you want to start that certainly before in this like 3-month period. So it's going to have like folate, it'll have all your B vitamins, it'll have vitamin C, vitamin E, and then like a lot of your minerals that we need for various reasons. The things that are not in a prenatal that you want to add are omega-3s. So omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil that'll provide you with your EPA and DHA. And then also vitamin D3. So those are sort of the 2, if we were to say like you get your prenatal, you get your omega-3 fatty acid, and then your vitamin D3 supplement. I would say that would at least cover your bases. And again, with supplements, like it's really best to be working with a practitioner before sort of taking things randomly. I also recommend like prior to starting any new supplements, just checking with your healthcare provider to ensure they're appropriate for you and they don't interact with any like current medications or anything. But yeah, if you're working with someone, they can help you tailor it from there. Like you might need other things beyond that. And with vitamin D, I always recommend testing your vitamin D levels before supplementing, because we need to sort of tailor the dose to the deficiency. Did that, those three, sort of the big three. Probiotic would also be good.
Let's just speak to a little bit, if you can, like people that like, I've been seeing more and more, which is interesting, clients that are like, but I don't want to take supplements, or like supplements are expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, it's hard for me because I'm like, I've always taken supplement, I mean, for years, like since I started nutrition school. And so it's just one of those things that I always spend money on. I assume I need to take. And so just briefly kind of speak to that. Like,
yeah. I mean, I wrote this blog post about supplements because I wanted to answer those questions too, about like, why can't I just, eat a healthy diet and be good? And in theory, you could, but unfortunately there's things like that we have to deal with, like soil depletion. And like, so we're not getting as many nutrients from our food anymore. We also, a lot of people have gut issues, so they're not really digesting and absorbing the nutrients from their food as well, and therefore not accessing the nutrients. We're all chronically stressed out. Stress dumps nutrients, like it's sort of excreting nutrients from your body. So there's a lot of reasons why, like, we can use an extra little boost. For some people, if they don't have, like, there's testing that you can do. Like, you could do the NutriVal test and look at all your micronutrient levels and see where you're deficient, and then go from there in terms of like targeted supplementation. But I really feel like a prenatal is like your insurance policy. It's like, yeah, maybe you're good on the B6, or maybe you're good on the vitamin C, but like, it's not going to hurt, and it can only help sort of set you up for a healthier pregnancy. With the vitamin D, I mean, that's just one that I've never seen anybody's blood work come back in optimal range on their vitamin D unless they're supplementing. Like, do you agree?
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like impossible, basically. Mm-hmm. So your vitamin D is needed to help create your sex hormones. It also affects ovulation and hormone balance, and things like, I mean, it's so important for your immune system and your bone health and all of that. So vitamin D is pretty crucial, and you just want to get that in optimal range. But as I said, like, it's worth, getting a blood test done and seeing where your levels are, so we can customize supplementation based on the deficiency. And then for the omega-3s, if you're eating a ton of, wild caught fatty fish, you might be able to get by without supplementing an omega-3. But most people don't eat a lot of fish, for one. And for two, we kind of have to also balance this with, like, well, you also get exposure to heavy metals when you eat fish. So sometimes taking a fish oil that's been purified of all contaminants like PCBs and heavy metals and stuff is almost a cleaner way of getting omega-3s, which we need to regulate hormones. Again, they're really actually important for increasing cervical fluid, and promoting ovulation and improving the quality of your uterine environment, like with blood flow, and it's essential for the fetal brain development. You always hear about DHA, right? So like DHA is really crucial for the baby's brain development, and just creating an anti-inflammatory maternal environment. So that would not be one I would skip either. It's hard to say,
Yeah, I think it's something that if I could like promote like a general kind of mindset around supplementation, it's that, like, it's worth it. Like, it might seem like a lot of money, but figure out like what you're spending money on that is not helping you. Like maybe stop drinking alcohol and buy supplements.
You'll have a lot more money for that.
Yeah. But like, like that's just kind of I'm pretty, I don't have a lot of sympathy for it. I'm like, no, we'll figure out how to buy them, because you need these. Like, you're going to save so much money in the long run of your health when your body has the right amount of nutrition, of nutrients.
Right.
And yes, you want to do your testing and do your due diligence on like, what are you low on and what do you need? But in my experience, most everyone definitely could use anti-inflammatory stuff. Definitely could use more, vitamin C, vitamin D for sure. Like all these things. I just think our lives are very taxing on our bodies, and so give them a little extra to help. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I that's why I like to think of it as just like insurance. It's like maybe you use it, maybe you don't, but at least you've got it there so that you're not sort of starting your pregnancy from like a nutrient depleted starting spot. That's not going to be good for you or the baby.
And there's so much here. And then another thing that I hear people talk about is like the second child. Mm-hmm. So like, because when you have a kid, it does deplete your nutrient stores. So is there like a rule of thumb as far as like getting like kind of doing the same process that we're talking about before?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. So you would want to like, again, because we were talking about like your thyroid, it's like a stress test on your thyroid, and all those nutrients that you're taking in is sort of you're giving that to your baby. So like postpartum is ideally like when you're rebuilding. And in Ayurveda, they call it like sort of the sacred 40 days. That like, so after you have your baby, and some of what Ayurveda talks about in terms of the postpartum period is somewhat unrealistic in modern society, like the woman not getting, sort of not putting her feet on the ground for 40 days, right? So like basically you just have like people waiting on you, and all your only job is to like sleep, eat, and feed the baby. And I get that's unrealistic, but it's also kind of like the concept is sound, like you're thinking about like, okay, this is, while yes, it is all about the baby in the first 40 days, it's also about like getting the mom back to feeling normal again. And so like eating warm cooked foods, lots of nutrient dense stuff like Kylie's liver, and having like sort of people help you out during that time so that you can sort of get repleted before even considering round 2.
Yeah. That's like a whole nother, I'm just thinking about the whole other subject of hearing people be like, I want my body back, or I want, and it's like, you just did this crazy thing that took so long and so much energy and nutrition and all of these things, like give yourself lots of time and lots of grace and lots of
for sure
eating good food, and
you don't want to be like starving yourself to get your body back. Like This is what you need to be like giving yourself everything that you need. But for sure that so I mean I do think that supplements are critical, but again, like that's something that people can talk about with their healthcare provider and figure out what's right for them. Mm-hmm. Based on their needs. And so number 4, I guess if we're going to, it's like sort of the 6 high level concepts. 4 is just reducing body burden and enhancing detoxification. So that's kind of what we were talking about earlier on. But I mean, unfortunately, the world we live in is contaminated with environmental toxins, right? So like while our bodies do have these masterfully designed detox systems, they can only handle so much strain before we start to like accumulate. And regardless of how careful we are, everybody's exposed to environmental toxins from like the foods we eat, to the water we drink, the air we breathe, everything. So there's like a lot of stuff you can't help. And so when I say reduce your body burden, really what I'm saying is helping to support optimal functioning of your body's detox systems and getting rid of the stuff that puts more strain, like puts more burden on your body to deal with. So that's when we kind of go back to getting rid of those inflammatory foods like alcohol and caffeine and sugar and artificial sweeteners and trans fats and stuff like that, but also looking at your environment, like using non-toxic beauty and home cleaning products, and trying to in order to try to minimize your exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, and eating organic, like choosing organic fruits and veggies and clean, healthy meats and stuff like that. Because as I mentioned before, like that it has been shown that infants can absorb 25% of the maternal toxins in utero. So you want to have like sort of the cleanest body you can pre-conception.
There's a movie or documentary called The Toxic Baby, I think, or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And
wow. It goes,
sad.
Yeah, it is. And it goes into like what's like how, babies are being born just with this huge toxic burden. Already, they're just babies and they already have a huge toxic burden because of what they've taken on from their mothers.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'll have to watch that. So I mean, in addition to like getting rid of the stuff that you're that's creating the burden, you also want to like just support your liver. So like get your liver functioning optimally so that toxins are quickly processed efficiently. And a lot of the sort of liver stuff, like liver support stuff, is pretty basic, like, drink plenty of water and eat cruciferous veggies. And you can do stuff like sweating. So whether you're sweating because you're exercising or you're using an infrared sauna, that's a great way to detoxify. Making sure you're pooping at least once a day, like that one's crucial. That's how your body, that's like sort of the primary route with which your body gets rid of toxins. So if you're not going to the bathroom, those toxins are either accumulating or they're trying to come out in other ways, like coming out through the skin and things like that. So I just recommend, sort of supporting your body with some gentle detox. And as I mentioned earlier, I have like those cleanses on my website, but I also have my own Keenist detox tea, which I recommend for a lot of women. So it's basically like a bunch of herbs like dandelion and nettle and burdock, and which are amazing for supporting the liver. So I just sort of usually will recommend that as we're working through the preconception prep, and then obviously discontinuing once they get pregnant.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so from there, the liver, we kind of covered that, and then going on to the microbiome. So healing and supporting your gut health. It's really crucial to address gut health as part of fertility and preconception care, because your microbiome does have actually a pretty big role in your ability to become pregnant. And a lot of people don't really realize this, but your gut microbiome and your vaginal microbiome are inextricably linked. So you want to maintain a balanced and diverse intestinal and vaginal microflora. And the reason being is that an imbalance in your vaginal microbiome can interfere with conception by creating an inhospitable environment for the sperm, which prevents fertilization. So it's essentially like getting our whole microbial ecosystem within the body as diverse and as balanced as possible. And usually healing the gut isn't super simple or straightforward, right? Like it's not just do one thing and you're all set. It really depends on what's going on for an individual person. But some of like the general things that we can all be doing to support our gut health is things like avoiding unnecessary antibiotics. And I emphasize unnecessary because obviously in some cases antibiotics are medically necessary, and you must take them, and they do great things for people, like they save lives. However, they're not always medically necessary, and a lot of times people sort of take them whether they really need it or not. They sort of take it as like the Z-Pack, it's like, oh, I have a sniffle, take a Z-Pack, and it's like, or it could just be a cold that you just need to drink some bone broth.
My friend's a PA, a physician's assistant, and she was just telling me yesterday that like she had a client come in that was like, can I get a Z-Pack? I have like, some sort of infection. And then she was like, and then I'll also need the fluconazole. It's the one for a yeast infection. Yeah,
because they're gonna get a yeast infection.
Yeah, she's like, I'll take the Z-Pak and then also just write me a prescription for the yeast infection, the antifungal prescription. And I was like, and my friend was like, no, like if you already know that these are like related, I mean, she's with it, she gets it, but it was just funny. I was like, man,
but that's like the perfect example of how your gut and your vaginal microbiome.
That is. It totally is. Yeah.
It's like you take an antibiotic,
I get a yeast infection.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, an antibiotic is going to kill everything. It kills the good and the bad. So overuse of antibiotics is definitely going to harm your microbiome, most specifically in terms of decimating the diversity. And it can increase your risk of gut dysbiosis, which then can translate into vaginal dysbiosis, and then you get a yeast overgrowth in the vagina, and you need your antifungal. So just if you have to take an antibiotic, that's fine, but just ensure you're taking a probiotic along with it and doing some gut replenishment work afterwards, just to kind of get things back. And with that, we can talk about like inoculating your gut with beneficial bacteria. So eating your fermented veggies like sauerkraut and things like that, taking a good probiotic, feeding. I also like to talk about like feeding the good gut flora. So just as important as it is to repopulate, we also want to make sure there's good sort of food in there for the beneficial bacteria to proliferate. So that would be like your prebiotics, like I don't know, let's see, like garlic, onions, leeks, dandelion greens, jicama, stuff like that, just for helping to nourish the good bacteria. And then, a lot of clients need more support than that. So in that case, we would really be like rolling out a full gut healing protocol to ensure their digestive functions optimal and healing their leaky gut. But yeah, so that's sort of the gut piece. And then I guess the last thing would just be dialing in the lifestyle factors. And what I mean by that is mainly like dealing with stress. Like stress is inevitable, but not managing it well can be a real hindrance to conception, because stress will disrupt or potentially even prevent regular ovulation. So basically how this works is that when your body thinks it's like physically under attack due to chronic stress, it makes the executive decision that this is not the right time for you to conceive, and it shuts down ovulation. So your body wants to see you get pregnant when you have the best chance of maintaining a healthy pregnancy and having that healthy baby. But so this is kind of like the evolutionary way of protecting you, which is actually pretty cool. I mean, people don't love that, because it's like, why aren't I ovulating? And then they get stressed about that whole thing. But it's actually like your body is sort of going like, this is not the right time for you. You're too stressed out. So like while there's no way, yeah, exactly,
natural.
Exactly. And there's obviously no way to like get rid of stress, right? Like that's unrealistic, but I do recommend like doing some form of stress management every day. So whether that's meditation or breath work or yoga or walks in nature or whatever it is, just to make you feel calm and grounded, and integrating that into your daily routine. And the other thing is just also like maybe even sort of like looking at your life and figuring out where you can slow down and make space for a baby, because I mean, your life changes, right? Like as soon as the baby comes into the world, like your priorities shift, and you basically get forced to slow down. And so I typically just urge the clients that I work with to consider like where they might need to start to set boundaries in their life, like with work and with other people and maybe with themselves, and figure out ways to like carve out more space for physical rest and mental relaxation. Because, I think that's kind of an important, we're sort of like, we have like our life plan sometimes, and it's like, it'll happen then, and this will happen, this and this and this and this. And it's like, sometimes the whole getting pregnant, your whole pregnancy plan, everything changes and it's unpredictable. And so just like spending a little time reflecting on your life and figuring out where you can pull back a little can be helpful. for people. So yeah, that would probably be my two main things.
Yeah. I've been really surprised, like working together and trying and watching my cycle even more closely, and, you know, doing all the things that on that physical, like on those first 5 points that make sense for me, and
Right.
just how much the stress affects all of that physical too, because it's like nothing's changed other than like this last cycle. You know, I was just the first kind of month we worked together, everything, or maybe 2 or something, it was like everything was going great, like all the markers were showing up, like, oh yeah, everything's improving, all the hormonal stuff's balancing. And then I had this really intense month of stress and travel, and my period was just like, what? Like it was totally blown up again. And there was no other factor other than the stress. So it's interesting, I think, to see that so viscerally, how much stress affects hormones. And it's not that it's going to affect everyone the same way. Like some people might be able to, like my resiliency might be down because of others, like, you know, chronic stress or something. But it's interesting to see very, very acutely how much stress can affect these physical changes. And then it really makes you realize, like, okay, I better take this whole stress management thing seriously, or I better really ask myself these questions, like, where can I mean, if this travel is going to stress me out this much, like, do I need to do it? Do I need to, like, figure out ways to not travel, or like, you know, just ask yourself harder questions about your priorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Perfectly said. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the main 6 things we would work through. And then, you know, I often always like bring up the male fertility piece, because I think that it's common for women to feel like it's all on them. Like this whole pregnancy thing is all on them, when really, you know, sperm makes half of your future baby's DNA. So it only makes sense for your partner to be on the preconception prep bandwagon too. And so, you know, there's just, again, like most of the recommendations are somewhat similar, like in terms of like eating healthy food and all of that. But yeah, I do recommend like women sort of maybe get their partners involved in like, hey, like how can we both improve in these areas in an effort to like make our baby the sort of the healthiest genetic blueprint possible, as opposed to like just the woman taking on everything. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the main things I'll just say like quickly with men is like the taking the cell phone like out of the pocket, or not having their laptop on their lap all the time. I mean, that's huge. Like those things are going to emit electromagnetic radiation and can damage sperm. So it's so simple, but it's like, skip that. Yeah. Start that's letting good. Those things.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. And a lot of, I mean, men also can benefit from some supplementation. Like most of the male infertility issues are oxidative stress related. So getting a lot of antioxidants from fruits and veggies, and potentially some like supplements and things, can be really helpful. But yeah, I know we're like running out of time, so I don't want to take up too much like talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good enough to just say like, hey, they should also consider some supplements, and probably those anti-inflammatory, like, you know, fish oil, good quality fish oil, multivitamin, antioxidant mix, you know, getting the sugar and crap out of their diet, alcohol, for sure. Yeah.
Totally.
Great. Well, this was awesome and so informative, and I know that people are going to find so much from this, and thanks for staying a little bit later and going through those things. So just to reiterate, the 6 things are the healthy diet, balance hormones, nourish your body with key supplements, reduce body burden and enhance detoxification, heal and support your microbiome, and then lifestyle factors. So those are the 6 things. And you can find everything about Stephanie on Keenist.com. is there anything else you want to highlight as far as how to get a hold of you?
No, just website would be great. Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun chatting.
Yeah, this was great.